So I prepared a second question. It's just to know where you are right now, in which continent, just to have insight or information about where you're currently located. Okay, this time the Nepal is faster. Good, then I will close the poll again. Okay, here the answers are very clear. Most of you are currently in Europe, so the biggest part, and then Asia, I think, also in India, and we also have 3% from North or South Africa. So most of you, I guess, also from the time zone, it's more convenient for you to watch from Europe. All right, then I have one last question. And this is concerning the GMAT test. We would like to know, so if you're already in preparation for the GMAT test, if you have perhaps already scheduled the test date. So you can just indicate, so if you have perhaps already a date for doing the test, or if you still are planning to do. Can already see indication. So I will close the poll again and share it with you. So as you can see, the biggest part of you did not yet schedule a GMAT. I think it's a good time to collect some information now during the webinar. But well, almost 32 or almost 32 persons did already schedule. So perhaps you can also gather important information if you're still in the preparation for it. So I think it's a good moment. All right, so these were the 3 questions for the beginning. Now I will continue with my presentation. So yeah, the first part, I would like to explain some information about how to apply, what are the admission requirements for Master Management at ESCP Business School. So to start with, there are 3 requirements for applying for the Master Management. First, of course, you have to hold a bachelor or master's degree in any field of study. If you have not studied master or a management, bachelor of management or in the management field before, then there are the prerequisite courses which take place in July or August. But applications are open for any field of studies. Then it's also important to speak English fluently, like level B2 advanced, as almost all of the courses are in English. And of course, because it's a very international school, we all speak English with you and also among the students. Therefore, it's very important for group works and the lectures and all communications. And then, which is also very important, is that you're internationally minded. As I already mentioned, the students come from very different countries, and so it's always good to be open for other cultures and for students from other countries. Then what is considered a plus in your application? It's always good to have some previous work experience, like in internships, or perhaps if you have some voluntary works or some other project experiences. So it's always good to mention this in your CV or in your motivational letter. Then, which is for sure also an advantage, are the additional languages. For example, because you will change from the different campuses, so it's always helpful to speak the local language of the other countries, like Italian or Spanish and French, and perhaps also German. And so it's more for your daily life if you're on the campus. Of course, in the school itself, it will be in English. And then international experience is always a good thing to have, as we are as we will travel a lot and change your locations often. So if you're already experienced in changing your location, it's always good to have. And here you can mention whether your internships abroad or perhaps also voluntary work. Let's say everything which is longer than 2 months and with some, where we had some benefits out and you learned something from. All right, then on the next slide, so to know which is the right application path for you, to find out this information on the first side, if you have obtained your bachelor degree in France, then the Concours d'admission direct is the right way to apply, the CAD. There is only one session a year, and they have to look on the website when is the application deadline. Then the second possibility, if you have obtained your bachelor degree in any other country than France, for example, in the UK, in Spain, or in India, then you can apply via the international direct admissions. There are 4 sessions per year, and you can find the application portal on our website. It's on the right side where you can log in. And if you're a second possibility to apply, if you have obtained your bachelor degree outside France, is to apply via China School in France. It's formerly SIE, and you apply for 5 business school, and among the schools is also the ECP business school. And for this application way, there are also 4 sessions per year. And you can find all the information about this way to apply on the website China School in France. If you have any questions about this application way, they will help you directly. So then first the eligibility guidelines, which is important for the Concours d'admission direct, and for those who apply with a French diploma. The bachelor degree must be recognized by the French Ministry of Higher Education, Research and Innovation. So this is very important. So to be on the safe side, you can already check with your undergrad school or your university if it's recognized, or also directly on the CFG's website to see if it's recognized and if we can accept it. Then for the international direct admissions or China School in France application way, it's important that your bachelor degree is awarded outside France after at least 3 years of university studies, with a maximum of 1 year in France. So it's okay if you've studied 1 semester or 2 semesters, but not longer than this. If it would be longer, then you have to join or to choose the Concours d'admission direct. Then there is also a special case, the dual degrees, as a lot of you have already collected international experience and have perhaps done dual degrees. And here it depends a bit on the more details, which exact degree do you have and how much time did you spend in which country. So it's not easy to say which way is the direct way. So here it's good to contact us directly, because it could be, depending on your specific degree, that you're eligible to one or multiple admission passes or none. So here it's always good to check individually. All right, then more information about the international direct admission. The admissions are organized on a rolling basis and consist of several rounds. And the specific application deadlines and also the dates of the admission rounds with interviews and the testing, and as well as the campus that is responsible for your application, are dictated by your country of residence at the time you apply. So it's important that you look on the website. You can click on your current country of residence, and then you will see, for example, if the campus in Paris is responsible for your application, or perhaps the campus in Berlin or in Turin. So it depends on your country, also your current country of residence. And then you can check the exact application deadlines and also the admission sessions on the website, as on our website. You can see it on the admission calendar and the online application. And that's why it's very important to choose your current country of location of residence, because then you can see the correct dates. in the right, or in the same section like the admission calendar, you can also find the IDA guidelines. It's a PDF where you can find, for example, which part of the application is more weighted and what are the required documents. Then another important information for your application is that you may submit an application in the same year you complete your bachelor degree, let's say pre-graduation. So it's no problem if you're right now studying, like we saw that many of you are still in their bachelor's studies. So as long as you know that you will finish your bachelor studies this year, and we would need a bachelor degree around end of November, then you are eligible to apply. Then you can only submit one application per year. So accordingly, you can also apply only through one application pass. For example, you can't apply the same time through international direct admissions and join a school in France, but you have to decide so which pass you want to choose. Also, in case you can choose, if you studied in France, then of course the CAD is the right way to apply. And after you have uploaded your application, and then there will be the screening. And if the screening was successful, then you will be invited to sit an interview as the final step towards admissions. So which documents are required for your application? What is important for us to see which courses you have and which grade is the other university transcripts of record. Then your degree certificate or diploma, if it's already available. If this is not available, then please upload your enrollment certificate to see that you're still enrolled. And then it's also good to add 2 references, like letter of recommendations from your professor, or perhaps also from your last internship or your work experience. And then the statement of purpose is there to show your motivation. Like it can be around a 1-page motivational letter to where you can write down, so why did you apply for the master management at ECP, and what is your interest to study here, and so on. Then it's also necessary to upload an English proficiency test. Could be the TOEFL or the IELTS, or also the TOEIC and the Cambridge. And then, which is in this session also one of the focuses, of course, then we need a logic aptitude test, for example, the GMAT, which James Barker will mention later, and or also the GRE, the CAT, or the TASH-MASH, which is another addition to all these documents. So we do not have cut-off scores, so it's not that you need for sure definitely a certain grade, but it's more like we do an overall screening of your application documents, and then, for example, you can balance the one with the other one. So perhaps if you have a lot of professional experience, then it can balance another part of your application. So then, so once your screening of the application documents was successful, you will be invited for the interview, which is currently at most of the campuses, I think, online. At least in Berlin, the interviews are currently online. So what is important for your interview for the ECP or in general for schools? Preparation is always good. So you can find out with who will be the interview. Perhaps you can also look up on LinkedIn who are the jury, and how will be the interview. For example, it's normally our interviews are around half an hour, and it's starting with an introduction of yourself and of the juries, and then there will be some questions or some rather also some conversation to find out who you are, what are your goals, and then which style does it have. So it should not be question answer, it's more like conversation in the best case. And the length of the interview, you will be informed, will be around half an hour, sometimes a bit shorter, sometimes a bit longer, and which is also good to prepare for yourself to justify also why did you choose the school, so that you can mention this or in the interview. Another tip to prepare for the interview is to reach out to alumni groups or also our student ambassadors, which we have one here. So they can talk about their experience and interview tips. Perhaps it's always a bit dependent where you had your interview, for example, because on every campus the jury is a bit different, and perhaps it's also a bit dependent from the personal style, which questions or which kind of questions they are asking. So perhaps Samyak, would you like to give some short impression about your interview? Or you did have it in Paris, no?
Yeah, definitely. It was an online interview, and it was from the Paris campus, and it was with the HR head at ESCP Paris campus, and it was kind of a general conversation, not really something grilling, but they wanted to know my motivations regarding why I wanted to join MIM, and they wanted to know my experiences, like how I came through this decision to joining MIM, and it was a really great experience for me. And I told them a lot of my stories, and they were happy to know my motivations. So it's not something that you should really be worried about. You should be focused on your maybe your stories and your experiences that led you to join the MIM program. So yeah, that's about it.
Okay, thank you for sharing your experience. Yeah, of course, you can also contact Samyak later as one of our student ambassadors. And which I also want to add right now, we have a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. So feel free to write down your questions already now in the question section or in the chat, or also afterwards. So if you have any questions during the presentation or afterwards, we will have time to answer them. So feel free to ask your questions whenever you want. So to continue here, you can also read the MIM blog article for preparation. There are 6 tips for a successful interview. So it's also good to get here some first information. And then there are further tips about the interview, of course, which is always helpful if you know your application, because the application documents serve as a base for the interview. The jury will read your essays, your CV, and also your motivational letter. So on a base which information they have, they will also ask you questions. So it's always good to remember what you have wrote before, and therefore it's always good also to make to be sure what are your focuses, and because the essays, as you perhaps have already seen, are not too long, so it could be that the jury sees something interesting topic and then they will ask you more questions about specific topics. So be prepared that there will more perhaps deeper questions about specific information. So that you can also know what we are looking for during the interviews or during the application in general is to find out what is the potential of the applicant. For example, to find out, do you want to be a part of the community, as we are very international minded community that is focused on specific goals. So do you have a similar mindset? Are you also open to be or to joining, perhaps also to engage yourself in some student as society, of which we have a lot on the different campuses, something like this? And then will you be also a good ambassador for the school? For example, like Samyak, he was getting then an ambassador. So how would your skills be to get one of these ambassadors? And then it's always also interesting to find out, so has the applicant the potential to have a successful career? For example, is he already very focused? Does he have some ideas and also the mindset behind to follow these goals? And then what the jury is also wanting to find out, how would the person, or how would you do also in a job interview. It's not really like in a job interview, but in a similar constellation. So, for example, because you will do a lot of internships, it's 36 weeks, so you will have further job interviews. So it's already a good indication to see how would you do in an interview in general. And then what we are also looking for is your experiences and the exposure. And here your fluency in English is very important to see, can you communicate good with your fellow students, or also are you able to understand all the questions, which is very important later for the lecturers and the classes. So it's also good to show your language skills. So then, as a next topic, know how to approach challenging questions. Of course, we want more a conversation in the interview, but it's always also the possibility to find out, so how do you react in more challenging situations, and to find out, for example, how would you react and if there is a problem among students or something, to have some case studies for your reactions. So it's good to know or to prepare, for example, if you will be asked about also your failures or difficulties, then it's of course always a possibility to show what did you learn about these failures and how did you manage them. So it's good to prepare something, some topics what you can mention here. Then yeah, prepare yourself about what are for uncommon questions. There are a lot of information in the internet that you can find for typical questions for interviews. And then, which the jury also likes to do sometimes, is to ask you some questions about current business news or current topics in the news. For example, to ask you about your opinion about some political situation or business situation. So it's always good to read the newspapers and to be up to date in these topics. And then, of course, it's also very important to be your authentic self, because if we don't get to know yourself, then the interview is not really helpful. So it's always the best to be yourself, so we can see you. Are you fitting to the ESCP Business School? Are you the right persons? Are we the right school for you? And yeah, therefore, to find out who are you, we make some kind of background or review of your motivations to see what is what is your own motivation for applying for studying the master management. So it is always good to show some personal insights of you. And here, to show your motivation, it's also good to give some personalized examples. For example, that you are very interested in specific classes that are offered at the ECP Business School, or also in specializations that are offered, or for example, some research that professors are doing here. So whatever interests you most, or where you can imagine yourself that you want to dive deeper. So it's always good if you have some examples prepared. And then we as the ECP Business School also want to make sure that you're a good fit for our institution. For example, that your personalities, so your international minded personality is fitting, that you're a good fit for the school's culture, and also can widen the alumni network. And yeah, which comes to the point that your authentic self is also to stay grounded. So don't play somebody else, but just be yourself and show your personality. Okay, then at the last point, it's always good that you prepare some questions for the interview, because normally at the end there will be some time for you to share your questions. And for this part, it's always good to have some interesting questions in mind or prepared, so that the jury is also recognizing, okay, he has he has prepared some questions here. He thought about what to ask, what is interesting for him, and therefore find some meaningful targeted questions and convey interest through these questions, and be also an active participant in the discussion. For example, if there are questions about current topics in the news, then it's always good to be active and tell your opinion. And in addition to that, and it's also good to have at least one or two concrete questions. It could be perhaps that these questions are already answered throughout the interview, but if not, then you have some questions prepared. So about the school or about the program. Of course, here it's good if you have questions about topics that are not directly on the website, but perhaps more deeper, and that you can show your interest here. Then you can also, of course, look up your interviewers on LinkedIn if you have their names to know already in advance with who will you talk, and perhaps about which topic they could ask you. Then more on the formal side, speaking about dressing, of course, it's, as we already mentioned, it's a bit like a job interview, so it's also important to dress appropriate and to be prepared. And we recommend always to dress in business formal, like for men, formal suits, classic shirt, tie and leather shoes. And for women, pretty the same rules apply. Also classic or more formal clothes. And in case that you are traveling to the campus, which is currently not the case as far as I know, of course, then it's good to prepare your outfit several days in advance. And did you also come in advance on the day if it's on campus? But all these dressing recommendations, of course, also apply for the remote virtual interview. At least the part that you can see in the video, it should be, and it should show that you have prepared for the interview and that you are in the right mood. And as addition to this, so overdressing is better than underdressing. So better choose one of your more formal suits than perhaps a more classic shirt. So here, just for your information, some key figures about our university and about the school. We have several accreditations, for example, from the ASDSB and the EQUIS, which is for the European part, and then the MBA is accredited from the EFMD and the EMBA. The Master Management this year was also ranked in the Financial Times ranking worldwide ranked on number 6, which is quite good. And if we see, as you can see here, we have a great portfolio of several programs that are offered on ESB Business School, like the Bachelor in Management, the Master Management, and a large number of specialized masters, MBA, PhDs, and also some custom and open program offers. There are around 7,000 students all over the different programs, and they're coming from around 120 different nationalities. So, as already mentioned before, very international student societies, student groups. And this leads also to a very international alumni group. So we have 65,000 active alumni in over 150 countries in the world, which you can use, for example, for contacts, for asking for job possibilities, or for perhaps for experiences in different job areas. So this can be always helpful. Then we have also academic alliances in Europe and also in the world in 47 countries, which shows again the very international-minded side of the ECB Business School. And also our professors are very international, so they're coming from over 33 nationalities. Okay, so this is my last slide for now. Here you can see my contact details. So if you're coming, for example, from Germany or Austria and Switzerland, the Berlin campus will be responsible for your application. Then you can contact me here. And if you come from other countries, then please look up on the website where you can find out which campus is responsible for you. And then also here again, the contact detail from the ambassadors. So if you have any questions about the studies and perhaps interview that you would like to ask current students, then you feel free to contact member ambassadors at ESCPU to ask them about their experiences. Okay, then I will hand over to James Barker, who can give you now more information about the GMAT. All right.
Okay, thank you, Bob. So let me know when you can see my screen, please.
Yes, it's working.
Fantastic, that's great. Well, thank you again, Barbara, for the invitation to join the ESCP webinar today. As mentioned earlier, my name is James. I work for GMAT. We're the maker and publisher of the GMAT exam. And my role really is to go around helping business schools utilize our products and services, but also talking to candidates about the GMAT exam. So what we're going to be doing today is a few things. We're going to be talking through three main areas. So one, looking at why the GMAT is used and how it's used as part of the admissions process. Secondly, we'll do a bit of a deeper dive into the sorts of content on the GMAT exam. And through that session, I'll be trying to link that back to the work that you're doing as part of your bachelor's degree or as part of the internships that you may have been doing. We'll then do a quick comparison between the online GMAT and the in-person GMAT. So since the lockdown came in last year, we've been offering the GMAT online as well as in the testing centres where we're allowed to do so. And then finally, we'll start to look at the process of preparing for the GMAT exam. And that's where I'm sure we'll get some input from the ambassador to help out with some advice for you to get you moving forward. As Barbara mentioned, please do type your questions into the chat box, and then hopefully there'll be some time at the end to address any questions or concerns that you may have. Okay, so firstly, looking at why the GMAT exam. The GMAT is a test of your critical reasoning and your logical thinking skills. So as we saw earlier, it's one of the aptitude tests that ESCP accepts as part of their admissions process. It's often one of the areas of the application process where students start to fixate and maybe start to even panic a little bit. It causes a bit of stress and anxiety at times. And I think that's partly because it's the one part of the application where you really have full control. So it's very difficult to amend your undergraduate GPA at short notice, to amend your professional experience, whatever it may be. However, with good preparation, you can score well on the GMAT and strengthen your overall application. The exam was first developed back in the 1960s when business schools wanted a further data point to show that people would have the suitability to cope with the rigors of intense master's degree courses, including the Master's in Management, but then also the MBA back in the day as well. It's now used by over 7,000 programs worldwide, and we see around 200,000 people appearing for the GMAT every year. So even though it's an important part of the application package, as we saw before, it's also important to recognize that this is only going to be one part of you as a whole. So as mentioned, we're here purely to assess your aptitude and your critical thinking. We are not here to assess your general academic aptitude, your motivation, your leadership skills, your business knowledge, all the other things that will make you a great participant on the ESCP MIM. So as we saw before, they take a blended approach to how they make the assessment, with GMAT being one part of that. However, of course, there is value in the GMAT for both the business schools and the candidates alike. So the business schools value the GMAT because it does provide an accurate way of assessing people's suitabilities for top-level master's programs. And there's years of data showing correlation between outcomes on the GMAT and how people perform in degree courses. But then also importantly, it allows them to make a judgment and an assessment across the candidate pool. So as we'll see later, the experience of sitting the GMAT will be the same if you're taking it in Paris or if you're taking it in Tokyo, New York, wherever you may be. So this is different to, say, the undergraduate GPA, which can vary from country to country, whereas the GMAT gives a consistent way of reading the candidate pool as a whole. But of course, for the candidates, you want to know what's in it for you, so why the GMAT is going to be valuable as part of your application process. The first thing clearly is it allows you to stand out. So the higher your GMAT score, the stronger your application is likely to become. As Barbara mentioned earlier, it could also help to compensate. So maybe if you feel that your undergraduate GPA isn't as strong as it could be, performing well on the GMAT exam could help to demonstrate that you have that academic ability to cope with the rigors of the Masters in Management. The GMAT also opens doors to business schools. So you tend to find that it's the more highly ranked and the more selective business schools who are requiring the GMAT exam. And some even utilize the GMAT as part of their scholarship considerations. So that could be a question for ESCP later, or the other schools that you might be looking at. And then finally, taking the GMAT is also good preparation for starting a business degree course. So as we'll see later, the skills that you'll be utilizing in the GMAT are also reflective of the sorts of skills that you'll be needing for the Masters in Management or other related degree. Okay, so now we'll move on to break down the GMAT exam. So looking at the 4 sections that comprise the examination as a whole. There are 4 sections on the in-person GMAT exam, each assessing a different range of skills that you'll be utilizing in the world of work, but then also, as I mentioned, in the Masters in Management degree too. I'll just walk through these one by one, and then we'll do a deeper dive on the next slide. So the first section, which appears on the in-person exam, but does not appear in the online version, is the analytical writing section. So here you're given a statement, and you have to write a response to that statement. This section takes 30 minutes and has its own individual score out of 6. Next, we have the integrated reasoning section. This has 12 questions to it, and again takes 30 minutes, and has its own individual score out of 8. Then moving on, after a break, should you wish to take it, we have the quantitative and the verbal reasoning sections. They are composed of 31 and 36 questions respectively, and these 2 sections get blended together by our algorithm to give you your total score out of 800. So when you look at business school websites, you might hear some business schools talking about a minimum GMAT score. That's not the case for ESCP, as we heard, or a class average GMAT score. And what they're talking about there is the quantitative and the verbal reasoning sections combined. In the in-person GMAT, you're also now able to choose the order in which you take these sections. So in the old days, you used to have to follow the routing that I just demonstrated on the previous slide, whereas now you can choose to either start with the verbal or start with the quant. And this is something actually to think about when you're doing your GMAT preparation process as to how you might feel most comfortable. So some people take the philosophy that they want to start out with the material they feel most comfortable with, so they can sort of ease into the exam. Other people prefer to start with the material that they think they'll find harder, so going in at their freshest to tackle that difficult material. There'll be no difference in the total score outcome. We know that from our research. However, it gives you more control over how you choose to approach the GMAT exam. However, you cannot choose your section order in the online GMAT at this time. Okay, so now let's do a bit of a deeper dive into the 4 sections, so the sorts of questions that you might expect to encounter, and the sorts of skills that we're looking to show that you can evidence. So the analytical writing section is there to show that you can analyze an argument and take an informed position. So the statement that you're given could be on any given topic. It may not be to do with business or economics or finance or anything like that. However, you've just got to show that you can take an informed approach and write a critical response to that statement. So you're looking to understand the underlying flaws in the argument that's given, to break down any assumptions that have been made, and make a valid conclusion in response to the argument that's been presented to you. Secondly, the integrated reasoning has 4 different question types. There's multi-source reasoning, where you're given a range of information sources and you have to choose the most appropriate one to come to the most valid conclusion. There's the analysis of tables and graphs. And then finally, there's 2-part analysis, where you're given 2 different data sets that you can manipulate on the computer, again, to come to the most valid conclusion. And what we're looking to see that you can do here is that you can integrate different pieces of information, make inferences, and draw those conclusions. So I always see this as being a bit like doing a consulting project or a research report at university. You don't include every piece of information that you have, but you utilize what you've got to make your case, to make your argument, and come to the most valid answers. Next, the quantitative reasoning. There are 2 different question types here. So clearly what we're going to do under the quantitative section is to show that you can evaluate a wide range of data. This is to show that you can cope with the more numerical aspects of the Masters in Management degree. And here we have 2 different question types. There's problem solving, which includes things like basic algebra, geometry, and so forth. So all concepts that you will have learned at high school. So the process of preparation might just be a case of refreshing. And then secondly, we have data sufficiency, where you're given two sets of data and you have to decide whether or not you have enough information to respond to the question that's posed to you. So you don't have to solve the problem, but you just have to see whether or not you have enough information to do so if you wish to. And a tip here for preparation is that the 5 answers that are given here are always the same. So if you can learn those off by heart, you'll be able to more rapidly identify what the question is looking for you to do. Finally, the verbal reasoning section has 3 different question types. We have reading comprehension. So here you're given a passage of text, again, it could be on any topic, and you have to show that you can understand the argument that's being presented by the author. Next, we have critical reasoning, where again, you have to challenge the writer to understand any flaws in the argument that's being presented to you. And then finally, we have sentence correction, where you're given statements that you have to amend to give the statement the optimum clarity. So here again, we're looking to show that you can evaluate arguments, synthesize your reading and reasoning, and make trade-offs when it comes to understanding the argument that's being presented to you. So again, this will be a skill that you'll be utilizing in the bachelor's degree anyway. So if you're given a research report or even something as simple as an email from one of your professors, you don't take everything at face value, but you interrogate the written information and you come to valid conclusions from that. And one of the tips here for people who are maybe non-native English speakers is to get used to reading information in English. So maybe look at online magazines, newspapers, and that sort of thing. And that will help you move through the material in an effective and timely way. So each of these sections, the quantitative and the verbal, are multiple choice and have, as we saw, a timing applied to them. There'll be a penalty applied if you do not complete those sections. So again, later we'll talk about how to manage your timing as part of the preparation process. Okay, so moving on to look at some of the kind of more practical information about the GMAT exam. And again, here's where we're going to start to look at the differences between the online and the in-person GMAT, because there are some differences here. So there's a quick guide here for you to compare the 2 different formats. So clearly one of the benefits of the GMAT online is that we're offering availability 24 hours a day all year around, so appointments every 15 minutes, whereas the appointment availability in the test centre may depend on your location. And of course, with the way things are at the moment, we may not be able to offer the exam in all locations. As mentioned before, you can choose your section order on the in-person GMAT. However, for the GMAT online, you have to take it in the order of quantitative, verbal, and then the IR. It's just the way the system is set up at the moment. And there are also 2 key things here with regards to sending your GMAT scores to the business schools that you wish to apply to. So for the in-person GMAT at a test centre, you can select up to 5 schools to receive your GMAT score free of charge at the start of the exam. You do not need to remember GMAT codes. You can simply search for the school in question via the drop-down box. So either look for ESCP, or if you're applying via Join a School in France, they have a GMAT listing as well, so you can submit it to them directly there as well. For the GMAT online, you send your scores later, and this is unlimited, so you can send it to as many programs as you like. However, in both cases, your GMAT score is valid for 5 years. And given that most of you are doing a bachelor's at the moment, it's also worth considering taking the GMAT now and getting it in the bank ready to go later. We know that people who take the GMAT as a bachelor's student tend to do better than those who've gone away and worked, because clearly you're used to taking examinations at this point in time. You're used to the world of study. So people perform better at the bachelor's level than the more experienced MBA candidates do. And in terms of retakes, hopefully with good preparation, you won't be needing to retake the GMAT exam. You can only take the GMAT online twice at this point in time, whereas the in-person GMAT can be taken up to 5 times over 12 months or up to 8 times in a lifetime. So hopefully you won't need to use those 8 attempts. And the reason why it differs is because of the relative sizes of the question banks. So it's all about testing security. All of your registration for the GMAT is done via mba.com. So in normal times, you can identify your nearest test centre in the manner shown on the slide here by putting in your city, putting in your nearest location, and then you'll be able to see the available appointments nearby. But as I mentioned, with the social distancing requirements that we have at the moment, test centres are operating at a limited availability. When you go for the GMAT, either in person or online, there are various security features that you have to adhere to. So again, one of the reasons why the business schools value the GMAT is that they can have high confidence that the person who appears on day one is the person who's taken the examination. So if you were to do it in person, you'd have to take your ID, you'd have your photo taken, and a similar system is in place for the online GMAT as well, with the online proctoring system. So you have to log on in advance, you have to present yourself to the assessor, and they'll make sure that you are the person who you claim to be. But I'd recommend that you check all of the policies for the online GMAT via gmat.com and be up to speed as to what you need to do when you're appearing for the GMAT. Okay, so now starting to talk a bit about the process of preparation. And I know that we're running through this fairly quickly, but wanted to leave time for questions. I know it sounds highly obvious, but preparation is really important on the GMAT. And the reason why I say it's obvious is that I used to work in admissions myself for a business school in the UK. And so often I'd see people with amazing profiles but poor GMAT scores, and it was always down to that lack of preparation. And there are two reasons really why the preparation is important. So one, clearly it's important to be familiar with the content of the exam. But secondly, it's also important to think about your examination strategy. So how are you going to be able to come to answers quickly and efficiently? How are you going to make your way through the verbal and the quantitative sections in a timely manner to avoid that penalty? And other tricks and tips that you can invent for yourself to give yourself the smoothest exam experience. One of the most common questions I get at fairs and events, so in the good old days when it was in person, but now online as well, is how much time should people spend preparing? And the reality is it's really down to you. So it'll come down to your appetite for study, it'll come down to your familiarity with the material. And it will also depend on the level of score that you're hoping to obtain. So with the GMAT, the questions get harder the more questions that you get correct. So to be able to tackle the higher graded questions, you need to be exposing yourself to a wide range of question difficulties. So just because you feel happy with the geometry or the algebra, whatever it may be, keep challenging yourself for those harder and harder questions, and that will then allow you to tackle those higher score bands. So here we do have some self-reported data on the median number of hours of preparation by GMAT score. And you can see that the more hours of prep that people have put in, the higher their score becomes. As I said before, it's very obvious, but the case does hold true. One thing that I would say about this slide is that immediately your critical thinking skills should be clicking in. And the issue here is that people tend to under-report the amount of preparation that they did. But the other thing that I normally say to bachelor's level students too is to treat the GMAT a bit like a semester's worth of work. So allocate some time every week for study, then have the goal of the examination maybe after 2 or 3 months at the end of that semester. I don't know if Samyak, if you want to talk a bit about the amount of time you spend preparing for GMAT.
Yeah. So to give the background, I was working in the firm. It was an 8-hour job, and I used to study after my office hours. And I used to give, I think, 2 hours a day, every alternate day. And it took me around 3 months to get a score of 690 with a quant score of 50 and a verbal score of 36. So yeah, somewhere around 2 to 3 months would really take you to around a 680 to a 750 range if you do it properly.
Okay, thank you. That's great to hear that the advice that we give sort of holds with your experience as well. So that's useful to hear. Thank you. So of course, GMAT has a range of resources that you can utilize to get started on the preparation process. And really, if you do not do anything else but this after the presentation today, please do download the GMAT Official Prep Starter Kit. What this will allow you to do is to make an assessment as to your level of ability, and will then allow you to build your own personal study plan. So as I mentioned before, everyone's preparation process is going to be different, but you can get a gauge as to how you feel about the content, and get a gauge as to how you feel your scoring might go via the free kit. So that includes 90 real former GMAT questions, as well as 2 practice examinations that work in the same way that the real GMAT will. And then, of course, you can boost your preparation by purchasing further exam packs should you so wish. And again, the key thing with practicing the actual exams themselves is not just the content, but it's back to the idea of timing and managing your exam experience efficiently. GMAT also has a range of resources that can allow you to do a deeper dive. So once you've identified where you need to focus, you can make that plan and then get stuck into the books that we have. So we have the GMAT official guide, which includes examples of all of the question types that will appear on the GMAT. as well as quantitative and verbal reviews that go deeper into the quantitative and verbal sections. We also now have the GMAT enhanced question pack as well, which gives examples of higher graded questions. So if you are looking to tackle those higher score bands, and that could also be a product that you wish to consider. However, of course, there's a whole range of different resources in the marketplace. So my advice is to really find the one that works for your method of learning. Find one that really will challenge you to help you get into those higher score bands. I don't really mind as long as you're taking the GMAT to get into the schools of your choice. One thing I will say though is that obviously the GMAT resources are the only ones with real former GMAT questions in, rather than interpretations of the GMAT content. But again, Sammy, I don't know if you want to talk a bit about which resources you used and anything that you found particularly useful as part of the preparation process.
Yeah, for sure. So GMAT can be as simple as possible and as complex as it can be at the same time. The concepts goes back to your high schools, and it's just the way of asking. So what I preferred for my preparation were the official guides, mainly the official guides. And it's not about the number of questions you do. It's about the quality of questions. You spend your time on a particular question and you understand it, and in a different ways it can be asked in the exam. So I always preferred the official guides, and I bought those test number 4th and 5th. You get first and second free when you register at mba.com. So I also bought that 4th and 5th tests, so to check to give more mocks, and I think they are more relatable to the GMAT exam. So and if in English, specifically in sentence correction, so if you're a non-native student, you might need that grammatical toolbox with you. And for that, I used this Manhattan book, a Manhattan sentence correction book. It gave me really great insights with all the preparation I was doing. So for some non-native students, you might need help in verbal. RC and CR are all about practice and doing quality practice, but for SC, you might need some materials to study. So that you can really look upon, but rest, the official guide is really apt and perfect. And if you want to get like, for example, I did not attend any coachings or tuitions to pass my GMAT. There is a very good resource called as gmatclub.com, where you can find the discussions, the students, they discuss, the form groups. You can find discussions of all the questions, and you can get the answers from there. So that is also one of the resources which I used very frequently during my preparation. So yeah, these were the resources.
Fantastic, thank you, Sammy. And yes, as you identified, there's a whole range of different communities online that can help. Always be sure to refer back to the official website to check policies and all of that sort of thing. But by all means, make the most of those communities that are there to help you. And if times allow and you're on your university campus, maybe you could even think about forming a study group or something like that to boost each other and to share best advice and practice. Okay, so that really was the GMAT overview, and I realised we covered a lot of material there, quite quickly. I don't think there's any time limit in terms of questions, but just before we wrap up, just to remind you that all of the information that you need will be found on gmat.com or mba.com. They are the same website. You can also find out lots of information there about business schools and how to apply. You can attend webinars and learn about the benefits of doing the master's degree. And you can also as I say, start your preparation process there too. So with that, I'll pass back to Barbara, and hopefully there's some good questions in the chat box, and we can have a bit of a discussion around the GMAT and the ESCP process. So thank you, Barbara.
Thank you, James, for the information about the GMAT. Yeah, the question session is quite full, so we already answered some directly in the questions, but I would also mention some of them directly here so that everyone can hear. For example, we had some specific about the GMAT, but also about the program. Let me open that. So, okay, let's see what we did already answer. there was one specific about the IR section in the GMAT test. For example, I'm having only 18%, but will it affect my total of a 740 score? Could you give us some information, James, about this?
Yep, so as we saw in the presentation, the IR section has its own individual score out of 8, so it does not go to the total score out of 800. So one of the things that you need to be doing is asking the business schools that you're applying to how they interpret the GMAT scores. So I think Sammy made the point that most master's programs are primarily looking at that total score. However, all of the 4 sections will appear on your transcript, so keep that in mind if you may need to present that later. So the IR doesn't take as much preparation because you see that it's utilizing the skills that you're using in day-to-day life, so the tables, the graphs, and so forth. It's also not computer adaptive, so the questions don't get harder the more that you get correct. And that's one of the other reasons why the verbal and the quant sections require that deeper level of preparation. That should be your focus because that's where the business schools are looking, but also technically there are reasons why those sections should be your focus as well.
Okay, thank you. Then there's the question if there is a minimum requirement for the TOEFL. As I mentioned during the presentation, there is not really a cutoff rate, but as we already also mentioned, is that you should have a level of B2 in your English test or your English level. And so a result of around 100 is recommended for the TOEFL, but if it's a bit beyond or also higher is always better, but then it's still possible to apply. As you can see on the IDA guidelines, for example, the language test itself is just 20%, so it's not the biggest part of your application. Then there's one question, should I mention why I scored less in IR in my essays, or should I mention during the time of interview? Out of my experience, normally we don't ask questions about the specific sessions, but do you have any addition to this question? James, or
I think I think maybe in the interview you should have your answer to give it to them. You should have the reasoning that why was it a less score. But as he mentioned that he got 740 in GMAT, so there must be some reason around a low score. And if he's able to present that in the interview, I think that would might make the case for him. So yeah, you should have the answer of that. Why was it low?
And one of the things to keep in mind is that the AWA essay that you write will appear on your official transcript as well. So that will be visible to whoever's doing your interview. So again, that might prompt some questions if you've not paid any attention to it.
Okay, then the next question is French a requirement for the application? So if you are asked about your French knowledge, as you were filling it in, so French is not a requirement. It's the most important is that you speak English, but of course it's always helpful if you live in France and for the communication, because your fellow students will be also French. So for communicating or for living in Paris, I think perhaps Samyek, you can also speak from your experience in Paris. Also, how well is your French level?
So currently I am studying at B1 level, and to know French is really advantageous in if you want to do a job in France or if you want to stay in France. And it's actually about the culture. If you know the language, you can really meet a lot of people, talk to a lot of people. So it's not a requirement per se for the MIM program, but it will be really helpful for the students if they want to stay back after their degree for finding jobs. So it's about that, the language.
Yeah. Indeed, and further requirement for the program or of the program is that you have at the end of the of your studies a C1 in one of your languages, like as in most of the students have a C1 in English, and it's recommended that you have B2 in a second language, because you will have 2 language classes during your first year. So then you have the possibility to improve one of your languages, if you, or also 2 if you choose English in addition. Okay, then there was one question, and I lost the question here. About if there is no AWA in GMAT Online, or AWA in GMAT Online. Do you have any idea, James?
Sorry, Bob, could you repeat the question? I didn't quite hear that.
The question is if there is no AWA in GMAT Online.
Yeah, so as we said before, that it tends to be the total score that the business schools are looking at. So again, there are, I think, 1 or 2 very outlying exceptions where business schools do definitely require the AWA. But again, with all of these sorts of questions, it's best to either check with the admissions teams in the schools that you're applying to. You've got the ESCP contacts there to find out what their specific policies are with regards to the GMAT interpretation. But it is correct, there is no AWA on the online GMAT.
Okay, the next question is about the bachelor from ESCP. If it's a French or international diploma, I'm not directly included in the bachelor, but if you have already studied the bachelor in management at ESCP, then you're not eligible for the master in management. This is several reasons, for example, the network and the lecturers and the professors. So it's always better if you have if you study in 2 different universities, because, for example, also for the network, the alumni network is also very important for your job careers and also for your own personality. It's better if you have more changes. So if you have studied the bachelor already at ECP, then you can't study the master management at ECP. Then yeah, there were several questions about if your university, if your campus, or if you can choose your campus where you want to start your studies, or if it's dependent from the campus where your application is handled. So this is totally independent. First of all, it's important where your current country of residence is, and this dictates where your application is organized. But then again, for your studies, you can start your studies wherever at every ECP campus. Because normally then you give an indication in your application where you would like to start, or your preferences at which campuses. It can be the later you apply that some of the campuses perhaps have no available seats anymore. That's why we always recommend to apply as soon as possible. But normally you can indicate all the ECP campuses for your first semester. But it's important that you apply or contact the right campus for your application. But this information, you can, as Samek also mentioned, find out on the website. So if you go in the admissions area, then you see, if you click on your current country of residence, then it shows you directly which campus is responsible for you, and also the admission dates and application deadlines. Then the university transcript, this is your grade sheet. So if you normally receive every semester an overview with your courses and the grades, so we would need this transcripts of records. Then this was answered from Samyak already. If Indian universities are eligible for English proficiency test waiver, you're speaking out of your experience, Samyak?
Yes. So it is accepted, and you need to get a document from your university stating that your education was done completely in English. And so ESCP gives this criteria that out of the 100 scale, they take 20 for the English test. And if you get this waiver, you get 15 out of 20 automatically. So that's the thing as well.
One addition to this, it's important because studying in English alone is not sufficient, but I guess in India it's the case that it's also the local official language, because it's important that it's also in an English-speaking country, like for example, the UK, US, and Australia. So if you studied in English and in an English-speaking country, then you don't need to show the English proficiency test. But if it's only in English, but let's say in Germany, then unfortunately it's not sufficient. Okay, then. There's one question for you, James. Also, is the GMAT essential skills valid or just the ones showed in the slide?
I think that's a question for you actually at ESCP, but as we saw on the slide earlier, it's GMAT or GRE or CAT or TAJMAT.
So the essential skills is not a specific test, it's the general GMAT.
Essential skills is a test that we're looking at developing and is being used in certain limited instances elsewhere, but is not widely available at this time.
Okay, so I think for this case, it's also good if you contact again your campus where your application is organized or handled. And the next word is also about the English proficiency. So if you have studied in, or if you are British, then you can, as everyone also has to upload his or her ID. And then if you're a native speaker proven by your passport, then you're also waived of the English proficiency test. So this is another possibility. And yeah, the GMAT is mandatory for the application. Some of the campuses are also offering an exemption test. For example, if you come from Germany or Austria, then Campus Berlin is offering this test. So if you're not able to do one of these tests and your current country of residence is one of the Berlin responsible campus, also for Turin, as far as I know, and Madrid, then there is an alternative. But normally the GMAT is, or one of the other management tests is necessary for an application. Yeah, again, the location of your interview defines not the campus of that you first join. So this is independent from each other. You can still choose any campus for your first semester. Then what is a good IELTS score? Samek also did already answer this. So if you want to score a good result, then around 7 is fine. We normally also recommend higher than 6 would be good, because 6 would be the B2 level. But as mentioned before, it's an overall screening. So if you have some results around this, it's good. 7, of course, is even better. Yes, GMAT preferred over CAT. As far as I know, they're normally similar. There is not really a difference. The admission rate, I don't know, you did already answer this. What is the admission rate?
Yes, so we did some research. Came out to be that the admission rate is somewhere around 25% for the MEM program.
Okay, this was an internal survey?
Yeah, it was internal survey, so it's not official, but we did some internal research. So yeah, it was somewhere around that.
All right, just as an orientation, like around this. Then there's the question, what is the age and work time limit to enter this MIM? Yeah, I can tell you the average age of MIM students is around 21st and 27. Samek, do you have an impression how old your fellow students are?
I think the average age comes around from I think 21, 22, 23 are the I think 22 will be the median probably.
Yeah, it depends. French students, for example, finish earlier their bachelor's, then there are some bit older. So as long as you're under 30, it's still possible. And from regarding the work experience, we recommend to have less than 3 years, because with 3 years work experience, you're more eligible for the MBA. So it's better to have not too much experience. Of course, some work experience is good, because you can also 16 weeks of previous work experience in the management field can be counted for your internships, but you should not have too much work experience as a master student, at least for the application. Then how many students do you take in per year? Yeah, somewhere I did already answer right. So it's normally around 900 until 1,000, and it's then divided over our 5 different campuses. So, for example, Paris is the biggest campus from ECP, and then yeah, the rest of the students are on the other campuses. Then by exposure, what would be an ideal GMAT score? Here we also recommend something like 680 would be good, but yeah, as to repeat again, it's not a cutoff rate, but 700 is also good. And for example, if you have already the plan to do a dual degree, let's say with the MIT, as we have the MIT also as a partner university, they are asking for a very high GMAT. So if you're doing a GMAT and you have this idea in mind already, then of course it's good to have a very high score, so you can use this again for an application for the dual degree.
So I would like to add something on this as well. So if you break down the selection criteria, so 10% comes to GMAT. So it's not very high. So it's not really a great decider for you. I have seen my peers ranging from 630 to 780. 630 student being a very good entrepreneur or having a very good profile, and there are some students, for example, I met a girl, she was a veterinary doctor, she was a vet, and she didn't had maths, and she scored 590, but she got selected because her profile was way too different and it was way too diverse. So it's really, there is no range, as per, if you say it really depends on what profile you are, what motivations you have, if you come around the SCP. But if you take a range, I would say somewhere above 630 with a good profile can get you a seat at the SCP MEM program.
Okay, thank you. Then the next question is again about the English proficiency test. There is one applicant, she studied in English in an English-speaking country, but her mother tongue is not English. So in this case, if you expect to have a very good English test result, then of course you can do the test again, or do a test, because if you have studied in an English-speaking country in English, your rating would be, I think as Samyak mentioned before, like 15, and if you have a really good result in the IELTS or TOEFL, then you can reach even higher grade, because the ratings are up to 20. So you can apply with this proof of English, but if you expect a really high result of your English test, then of course you can do the test as well. Then as one question, is it easier to be accepted if you are already an ESCP alumni? As also mentioned before, if you have studied the Bachelor in Management before at ESCP, then you're not eligible for the Master in Management. So in this case, it's unfortunately not an advantage, but if you want to choose one of the other programs, then it would be possible. Then there's one question about the recommendation letters. On the website, it's not mentioned yet that recommendation letters are required. So you can use them, and it's always good to have one because then they give extra points. But if the rest of your application is really very outstanding, then it's not too important to have this recommendation letters. Or do you have any experience about the recommendation letters, Samyak?
Yes, so as you said, it is always good to have one. So I had, in my application, I added 2 recommendation letters, and which one was from my professor in my bachelor's, and one was from my internship manager. So it's good to have some LORs like this, or if you have even 2 professional like academic LORs, then also it works. And I think it is being seen by the admission committee, and it gives you a kind of authenticity from someone, that okay, this student, I recommend this student, and he's gonna do great or she's gonna do great. So it's good to have a LOR, but even if you don't have it and your profile looks really amazing, I know some of the students who didn't put their LORs, but it's not it's very common to put LORs in your application. That I can say.
All right. The next question is about admissions between bachelor students with bachelor background, management background, and other backgrounds. So we don't have a certain percentage. It's not really dependent on the study or the field of study that you studied before. It's more important of the quality of your application. One of the main differences is that if you have not studied management before, then you have to do the prerequisite courses, which are currently online in Paris and Turin during July and August, and in the beginning of September perhaps too. So these prerequisite courses are there for that you also have a pretty similar level or also some basics in management, and then that you can work together with those students who already have studied management. So the field of study in general is not so relevant in the admissions. Then there's one question about the scholarships, if we are offering some. Yes, as Samek already mentioned, we have merit scholarships for non-EU students and need-based scholarships for EU students. So it depends where you are, where you're coming from. For the merit-based scholarships, you apply immediately when you upload your application. And for the need-based scholarships, there is some specific crew level. It's from the French system, and it depends if your parents, for example, have low income. Then you can apply throughout the summer, and then around September, the results will be published if you get a scholarship, as a need-based scholarship for EU students. So these 2 kinds of scholarships are offered from ECP. Samek, did you apply for a scholarship, or have you been awarded with one?
Yes. So I got 25% scholarship in the first year, and I didn't apply separately. It was, I think, the merit scholarship, and I know a lot of friends who got 100% scholarships, and there are few third-party organizations as well, such as IFIL scholarship and Charpak Raymond scholarship. So the students can apply there as well, and a lot of ESCP students get third-party scholarships or from ESCP as well. So it depends on your application. So they will probably make a ranking out of all the students, and the top maybe top 50 or top 70 students, I don't know the number, they might get in the scholarships. I think last time I heard the scholarships worth were around 3 million euros. So
yeah, I think on the website is something mentioned with at least 1 million, but there is some budget for it. But yeah, interesting information. I think if students or applicants have more questions about first scholarships, perhaps they can also contact you. So exactly. Perhaps one addition: the 20% of scholarships, they're regarding the tuition fees. So you're not getting the money on top, but your tuition fees are reduced. So there's one question about the current situation, if the classes are happening online right now. So yeah, as almost all of the campuses are under lockdown in the different countries, we are now offering, as currently, online classes. For example, in Berlin, the Berlin Senate decided that we have to offer online classes till 31st March, so for the semester, yes. But of course, at that now the vaccination is starting or going further, we are all hoping for a fall, that we can open at least in a hybrid version, but hopefully also directly on campus. Okay. Then there's one question about how many essays there are. If you start the application on the application portal, you will see there are several questions. For example, about your work experience and your international experience. So you can always write a small text, perhaps around 10 lines, and essays at all, as you can see it during your application. I think there are at least 4, but you can look for the exact number on the portal. Then during the course, are there any internships? So the internships normally are meant, normally it's meant to be that you are doing the internships during the summer break. So that means you will have classes from September to December, and then from January to April. And always in the last week of classes, or of the last week of the semester, there will be the exams. And then after mid of April until beginning of September, you have the summer break, and this time you can use, for example, for the internships. And in addition to that, you can also take a gap semester or a gap year. So many students are taking a gap semester between year 1 and master year 2, which is, for example, also helpful if you collect more professional experience, and then you can choose the specialization of the second year based on the experience that you made in your professional internship. Exactly. Would you like to add something? Are you?
Yeah. So there were a lot of questions about the careers and the internships. So yeah, we need to validate 40 weeks of internships. I think due to the COVID, that has been reduced to 36, and out of that, 16 we can validate from our previous work experiences. And ESCP conducts a lot of career services. For example, today itself, the Paris recruitment days, it has been started. I just saw there were 228 positions for which the students have applied, and even the Berlin recruitment days have started. So what ESCP does is they can connect you with the recruiter. They can get you the what we say in modern world, a job dating kind of thing, and then it's up to you to get that job, or to convince that recruiter that you are the one. So there are a lot of career services. We have a lot of counselors that help us in perfecting our CVs, and perfecting our cover letters, perfecting our pitch, and what all should we do. And there are a lot of clubs at ESCP which helps you to do that. For example, one club is 180-degree consulting. There is one called as JET. So if they really give you real work experiences, so that you can apply for internships. But at the end, they will not directly give you a job. They will give you a platform so that you apply, you get selected, and then you talk to the recruiter directly. So yeah, that's about it for the internships.
One addition, it was reduced to 36 weeks because of the member reform, also, in addition to that. So now you have to validate 36 weeks. All right, then there's one question about the minimum requirement of GMAT score. Yeah, I think we discussed this question again before, so there's not really a cutoff rate. Of course, that is always better, and then around more than 640, 680 is always good if you achieve some number like this. And There's one applicant from India. He's asking if or she can submit her scores for the application. Yeah, exactly. The intake application portal is open for applications. It always opens around October for the upcoming intake year. So, for example, we did open the application portal in October 2020 for the intake year 21. Then again, one question about the average age. So yeah, let's like mentioned before, between 21 and 26 or 27. There's one question about a double degree. So the requirements, one student is asking what are the requirements for being eligible for the double degree with the Koźmiński University in Warsaw in Poland, which is one of our campuses too. For the double degree, the requirements are very specific. So here it's always good to contact the direct responsible persons. One of my colleagues is in charge of the double degree, so it's the best if you contact me and I can give you the contact, or if you contact directly her. But you can write me again, and then I will give information, because for the double degrees, every university has their own requirements, and it's very specific on in which university you are interested. Then there's one question about the internships, if the school is helping to find these internships. Yes, Samyak already answered it, that every campus has a career development service, and you can always go there, make appointments, and then they have also the cooperation network. So there are colleagues to help you on the professional side. Yeah, one question about the scholarships. Here it depends. When do you have to apply for the scholarships? Here it depends if you are a student from European Union or from outside of the European Union, because for the merit-based scholarship for non-Europeans, you apply directly with your application, but for the need-based scholarship, you apply throughout the summer. So if you have applied, you will be informed about that the applications are now open for the need-based scholarships, and then you can apply for them. All right. So there's one question about, is it possible to take part-time work during your program? Normally it's a full-time study program, and of course the study should be your main focus. Part-time, as it's, for example, in Germany, you can work up to 20 hours a week. But for example, at the beginning, you should first have a look how much time do you have to spend for the studies, and if you still have time for working. And or do you work, Samyak, outside of your studies, and which you recommend, or do you know many students who are working part-time?
So not really. I would recommend, since the first 2 semesters are very grilling at ESCP. Last semesters we had 8 courses, and this semesters I have 9 courses to complete. So it gets tough, and actually the courses are very interesting. So you get a lot of work after classes. So it's not really, it's tough to do a part-time job. And particularly me, I don't know anyone else who is working part-time in the first 2 semesters. Probably after this summer, there might be some space and time for us to do the part-time jobs, and then maybe we can look for it. In France, you can do 20 hours per week of part-time jobs if you are studying. So that's there.
Yeah, so it's also dependent from your own management skills, like how well can you manage your time if you are able to work aside your studies, and how much time do you need for preparing the classes and the projects. So then the next question, I think, is for you, James. You already answered them. If in the UK are still GMAT in-person tests possible?
Yes, in all cases, you should be looking at gmat.com for the latest test centre availability, but it will broadly map to the situation in your current location. So in the UK, we are under a lockdown with no travel permitted without good reason, and test centres are closed in the UK.
And do you have any idea how long the GMAT Online will be offered?
Yeah, so the GMAT Online will continue to be offered. So the dates will be rolled out in due course. I've seen a couple of questions about the dates for March, and they should be online very soon. So I'm hoping to get an update tomorrow, actually, from our GMAT director on that.
All right. So it's a possibility to do them online.
Yeah.
And then there's one question. If you apply for the fall semester in September 20, starting in 21, when will be the latest date for us to submit the GMAT score? So it depends a bit on where your current country of residence is, but normally you will have time until 11th May. I think this is the latest or the last application deadline. So this would be also the latest date for submitting your GMAT. Then the question about scholarships was already answered. And about the internships, when you can do the 40 weeks of internships, like yes, already said, like between, as in the summer break, also after the second year is still possible, then you can recognize 16 weeks of prior work experience if they were in the management field. And then many students also take a gap semester or a gap year. Then there's one question about if the classes will be on campus in September 2021. Like Samek already mentioned, probably, but we can't predict the status, unfortunately. So it could be that it's a bit different on every campus, because of course every campus is dependent from the decision of its own country. Like in last semester, the decisions in Spain were different than in Germany, so it depends a bit from the government. But I would say right now we are all hoping that we can open the campuses, and if the imaginations are going further, I think at least small groups, for example, could join at the campus, but you will get more information throughout the coming months. Then is the one question if you can start your application at the ESCP website in the application portal if you do not have all the documents yet. Yes, you can always log in and log out, so you can join or put first the documents and add other documents later on. Samek, how did you organize or handle your application? Did you upload all your application documents at once, or did you also make it more in a process?
So, no, I uploaded all my documents at once. And I remember a few of my friends, they were not able to upload all the documents. So the admission committee, they asked them via mail to submit the required documents later on as well.
Okay, I will keep track of that. All right, then there was one question if I will have a disadvantage if I take the online GMAT because it does not include AWA. So as most of your fellow applicants are doing also the online GMAT, as far as I know, there is no disadvantage. Samek, you also want to add something?
Yeah, the online GMAT will not be a disadvantage for you at all, because the admin, the AdCom has your motivation letters and all your essays. So so it really doesn't make much difference in terms of if it is online or the on-site GMAT. It doesn't make any difference.
Okay. Yeah, also because nobody is directly responsible for the current situation, that we can't only or the GMAT can only offer online GMAT tests, so it's no disadvantage. Then the minimum GMAT, so this was already answered that we have no cutoff rates, but around 640, 80. And yeah, if you have a TOEFL or a language English proficiency test is necessary if you have studied, or it's not necessary if you have studied your bachelor studies in an English-speaking country in English. If you just studied in English but not in an English-speaking country, then we would still need an English test result. There's one question: what is considered a good score for ESCP? It depends. Score in what? For if you're speaking of the grades in your bachelor's, for example, normally some grade better than 2.5, for example, in the German system is good. Of course, here is also the more better chances you have, but it's overall screening. So if you have other skills, then you can balance this. Then there was the question about the replacement test. Here, the school is offering on some campuses a replacement test for the GMAT, but not on all campuses. So it depends where your current country of residence is, and then you can contact your respective program manager, and they can let you know if there's a possibility to do a replacement test. So perhaps that's a question. Yeah, did you already answer, James? What is the GMAT lifetime limit? Perhaps you can answer it.
That's up to 8 times in your lifetime, but as I mentioned before, hopefully with good preparation, you shouldn't be needing to take it more than once or maybe twice.
All right. Thank you. There's a question if you can send the physical GMAT results to a school. Of course, you can also send us the documents per mail. We're accepting them also digital, so you can upload on the application portal, but you can also sending to us per mail. So perhaps, James, you're more in the process. If students during the GMAT test, they can indicate different schools where they want to send the results.
Exactly. So they can do that at the testing center. They can nominate 5 programs, choosing from the drop-down list, so they can select ESCP or join a school in France. They can add further programs later if they wish to, but they have to pay a fee for that. However, on the online GMAT, it's limitless, so you can send it to as many schools as you like. And the reason for that is because your score is actually delayed by a week for the online GMAT, whereas in the test center, you get the score immediately.
Okay, thank you. And there's one question about the TOEFL score, if the last TOEFL score counts or the best. Here it's important that the language course result, the language test result is not older than 2 years. So the newest one, also if your second test result is also not older than 2 years, then of course you can send us the better score, but it has to be younger or more, not older than 2 years. And there's one question, if the chances are lower to get into the program if I take part in the last admission round. So normally in the last admission round there are most applicants because it's getting closer to the semester start, and so well, if you still have a good application documents, then of course you have a chance, but normally there are also more competitors, and as another addition, it can be that some of the campuses already have no seats available anymore. So if your first preference is, for example, Madrid, and then it could be perhaps then that you are going to your second preference. Or Samek, did you, or which application round did you apply? Do you remember?
Yeah, so I applied in the second round of application.
And you would also recommend to apply earlier?
Was in January, last year. Yeah, I would recommend to apply as early as possible, and it makes a difference, I think, in terms of the scholarships as well. The more earlier round you will apply, the more chances of a scholarship there will be. So yeah, it's better to apply in the earlier rounds.
Yeah, definitely. Then there's another question about the TOEFL IELTS exam. If you have already a B2 certificate from your school, well, we can just accept these mentioned official test scores, as a TOEFL, IELTS, TOEIC, and Cambridge. So if your school is not in an English-speaking country, then unfortunately we can't accept another proof. All right. The question, you can maximum study for 2 semesters in one campus. Yeah, that's correct. That's one of the program rules. So because one of our advantages is the campus system that you can choose out of our 6 campuses. It's also meant that you take advantage of this experience and change as a study at different locations. And therefore, there's the rule that you cannot study more than 2 semesters. You can, of course, also study 1 semester, so you can study in up to 4 different countries, or also in 2 countries if you stay 2 semesters in each country. Samek, in which or in how many countries did you study so far, or what is your plan?
So my current plan is to be in Paris for 1 year, and then I will look for the exchange program with or yes, London. In the post time, but it really depends a lot on where you want to end up. So if you want to a job in UK, you need to study the yes.
It seemed that your internet connection was a bit did have some problems.
Can you hear me?
Just not really very clear.
Okay. Okay, I'll just turn my webcam, maybe if it works. Can you now clearly?
It's a bit better, I think, but not totally.
Is it more clear now?
Yes.
Maybe I'll type it down in the chat. Is it clear now? Great. So your decision to move to the countries depends on where you want to really work. So in the end, I want to land up in Germany. So I'm planning my last semester to be in Germany. And if you want to work in UK, so your last 2 semesters should be in UK. That would get you a tier 4 visa. So it's a bit complex process in which you have to think it through on where you want to land up at the end of your degree.
Yeah, there are several facts that you have to consider for your decision where to study, when the specializations at the one side, and then also your career goals. So if you're not totally sure, of course you have still time for the second year decisions, because you do not have to decide at the beginning for all the masters, but you can decide, for example, in the second semester where you want to study in the third and the fourth. But there is several points that you have to take into account. There is one question about the English proficiency again. So if the language of instruction is not mentioned on your degree, well, then again, it depends where your university is. If it is in an English-speaking country, then we can see it on the on your diploma. But if not, then we would need English, one of the official English tests. I'll have a look. One question about the GMAT or the personal ECP test. So you can choose only on specific campuses. For example, in Paris, you can just do the GMAT test. And if your responsible campus is Berlin, you can also choose to do the replacement tests. But this depends again on your current country of residence. There's one question. I have a master degree in engineering, and I would like to know what are the different sessions held to take a GMAT exam. James, I think they can find it on the website, no?
Yeah, so unlike some examinations, there's no set window for taking the GMAT. So we offer all the year around in the test centres when they're able to open. And as I mentioned earlier, we have 24-hour-a-day availability for the online GMAT.
Ah, good. Then there's one question about your current country of residence. So if she's right now in France, but will be in Berlin from March onwards. So if you already know that you will apply in March, when you are in Berlin, then you can indicate Berlin as your application campus, because dependent where you are during your application. Then regarding the IELTS score, so for the beginning, it's okay if you send us a digital version of your IELTS score result from the website, or if you have a email result. But for the application, we do not need directly the scan of the original letter. Digital version is for the beginning enough. Then here's one question about the GMAT score. When is it better to apply? Well, it's hard to tell because it depends a bit of your competitors in this rounds. In January deadline, if the rest of your application is already very good, then of course you can apply with this result. If you expect a really higher result in March, because as also Samyak mentioned before, the GMAT result is only counting 10% of your application. So it's not the biggest part, it's one part, but perhaps then it's, if the rest of your application is already finished, or they've already everything complete, then you can also apply in January. So, all right. As already mentioned before, what are the advantages to take the GMAT versus other tests? Yeah, in fact, there are not really so much differences. Or what would you say, James?
Yeah, I think the only thing to say is that obviously the GMAT is one of the most widely accepted examinations for entry into business school. And also one of the key things to think about is that it's part of the language of business and the business school world, so to speak. And that is because the exam was developed by business schools for business schools originally. So the concepts on the GMAT are very closely tied to what you'd expect to find on a Masters in Management or an MBA.
Yeah, that's true. One addition to this, for example, again, for the dual degrees, it's very often that they're asking for a GMAT result. So this would be one advantage, that you can use it also for the application for a dual degree. So in this case, it makes more sense to do the GMAT. Then one about the bachelor degree in English in Germany. So in this case, because you study in English but not in an English-speaking country, then you would still have to do one of the English tests like IELTS and TOEFL. One question is about the admissions and the double degree with the Koźmiński University. You can contact me, and then I will forward you the correct contact details, because we have one colleague who is organizing who is in charge for the double degree and the dual degree, and she can give you some first information. And there was one question for you, Samyak, about the preparation materials apart from Manhattan and OGs. But you already wrote the answer.
Yeah, I gave that answer in the chat box.
Like perhaps you can repeat them for those who don't read the question test answers.
Sure. So I preferred only the official guide and the Manhattan books for verbal. Because I am non-native and I didn't have that great grammatical knowledge, so I needed to use some of the books which were separate from the official guide. So I used Manhattan for that, and I think that's one of the best resources for sentence correction. And apart from that, only the OG questions are good for the practice and their mock tests. So you can even buy their mock tests. And anyways, you can always take the free tests from different GMAT tutors, because you see, I think about the free tests is the tutors, they always try to put their best in the free test, and it will give you a very good image. So you don't need to buy those tests. Just give the free test of one from Manhattan, one from Kaplan. You can get one from Princeton. So you can do that, and for the most accurate result, you can prefer the MBA.com tests. Yes, that's about it.
Okay, thanks. Then there was one question about additional fees that we have to consider to apply. Well, on the one side, there is the application fee of 180 euros. And then, of course, if you do one of the English tests, there are additional fees, and also for the GMAT. Later on, you will have to pay a deposit of dependent from where you are to save your seat. And then, of course, the tuition fees. And well, then additionally to this, the life costs in the different countries, which is also a bit different. For example, normally Italy is a bit cheaper than London, and this is also something that you can take into account. And if you apply for a gap semester, for example, you have to pay a certain registration fee so that you're still registered in the university, but during the gap semester, you don't have to pay the tuition fee. Then one question about English proficiency. If you have an American high school diploma obtained during an exchange program, if this counts, so it would be necessary that you have studied 3 years in an English-speaking country. So if it was just one exchange semester, then it's unfortunately not enough. All right. And the next question. If you want to discuss your profile and your application, you can contact your respective program manager, as it depending where you are, which is your current country of residence. Then you can contact them and ask them. So, how would he, or what would he recommend? What you can improve in your application or whatnot, and how is the fit of your application? All right. Let's see the other questions. The attendance rate is also getting lower. I see already we are reaching the 2 hours. So let's see how long you will still join. But thank you for joining still until this long time. There's one question about the transcripts and the GMAT. So if you take the GMAT now, but you are now in your 2nd year, you can apply, but as you can apply for the intake 21 if you will finish your bachelor in September. So this depends a bit. If you cannot finish your bachelor this year, then you will have to apply in the upcoming year. Here's one question about, can I apply for ESCP first and then submit my GMAT score? This is only possible in very specific reasons. Normally, you have to upload everything together. So if you upload your documents in the application portal, you have to have all your documents with you. Then and there was the one question already answered by you, James. The main differences between the in-person GMAT and the online GMAT. Perhaps you can repeat it shortly.
Yeah, so basically the section order cannot be chosen. There's no AWA on the online GMAT. There are also one or two pricing and technical specifications you have to follow for the online GMAT as well. So my advice really is to go to gmat.com and compare the two side by side. So I had a table in the slide earlier during the presentation, and they're similar on the website as well. Okay.
All right, thanks. There's one question about if I've done engineering, or am I eligible to waive off the GMAT test? No, in this case, it's independent what you studied before. We still need the management test result. You can't have less than 3 years of experience for MIM. No, this was in the opposite, like you should not have more than 3 years, because then you would be more appropriate for the MBA. So it's good to have some work experience. Of course, less in different areas, perhaps also internationally, but it's always good to have some work experience, but not more than 3 years. There's one question about a letter of recommendations. We will accept academic letters as well as professionals. So if you have both letters already prepared, then yeah, feel free to send both ones. There's not really a preference if we accept more academic or professional. So if you have both, then please upload both letters. And for example, if you have only academic letter of recommendations, but 2 of them, then you can also add them here. There is one question about, is it complicated to get scholarships? I guess, Samyak, you already mentioned it. Did you know a lot of students who have replied?
Yeah, a lot of students get it as well. So it really depends. As we already told you that there is a like criteria of selection. So you get scores, and then the top 50 or 70 students get these scholarship. So give your best effort, motivation.
Sorry, your internet connection is bad again. Perhaps if you turn off your video again. Yeah. Sounds like it's not working so well.
Yeah, I tried with a lot. I'll try to reconnect then.
Okay, good. I will continue with the next question about concerning the GMAT ACP. Are you focusing on a special part or just the global score? So for us at the Berlin campus, we are just looking at the global score. So here it's at least for the application, it's the global score is important. It can be that for applications for the dual degree, perhaps also special parts are important, but not right now. Then one question about the age. If you're 32 years, you're already older than the average students. So perhaps keep in mind, so it will be a different study group. So normally we recommend that you apply if you're under 30. but it would be possible, but then perhaps MBA would be more convenient for you. Then there's one question about the grade system. So you obtained your bachelor's degree in Germany, and you will apply via the Berlin campus. Then you can also upload your bachelor degree in Germany, and then we can use the German grading system. Yeah, the grading system. So this is totally fine. You don't have to convert it to the GPA. So I think most of the further questions are already answered. What is the weightage for interview as compared to whole process? Yeah, as Samik already wrote, the interview counts 30% of all. And GMAT is not a sufficient proof for the English language proficiency. Also for this, we need an extra English test. How would you describe your student body, and did the school take any measures to connect students? Well, as mentioned in the presentation, the student body is very international. They're coming from different countries, but as well as from different backgrounds, and not all have a management background, but also perhaps social art or something, or engineering. And the measures to connect students, perhaps if Samyak is coming back, he can talk about.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear? Yes.
Okay. So about the student bodies, and so it's been a really tough year for us, but we do connect well as well. We have adapted it, and for example, I am currently in 180 DC, and I also am the student ambassador. So we have a very big group. There are a lot of different students from different countries, and we really have adapted things, and now it's normal for us to hang around on video calls and meetings. So yeah, the COVID has probably ruined some parts of it, but it's better that we are still connected online, and we are able to do our things online as well.
There are possibilities, but of course on campus. But I think that's a good idea to mention that there are student societies and different possibilities to connect with students. So if you engage yourself, then you have more chances to get to know your fellow students and so on. All right, then let's have a look. If you don't have any work experience, it's possible to apply, but then depends on the rest of your application. So if the rest of the application is really good, then of course you can still apply. And perhaps if you have done, or if you've as a balance, then more international experience, perhaps for voluntary work or something, then for example, it would be good. So let's see. And there's one question about the work experience. If only full-time work or also student or part-time jobs are considered. Of course, if you have did part-time jobs during your studies, it's also good to mention. For example, if you have worked at university or did some management-related study job, of course you can mention this as well. There's one question for you, James. That you answered. Do you recommend to register for the test and have a certain deadline to study, or is it okay to take my time and study? Then
yes, so people should only really register for the GMAT when they're confident that they're going to be ready to perform well on the day itself. So there are fees that are applied if people start moving around their appointment dates. So it's best to start the preparation first of all, get a sense as to how long you're going to need to make that preparation, and then you can book accordingly. So normally for the test centres, there's good availability for the in-person exam anyway. It's a bit more strained at where they're having to social distance at the moment. And as mentioned before, the online has that good availability, so less of an issue now.
Okay, thanks. Then, are the students spread equally over all campuses? Well, as I told before, Paris is one of, or is the biggest campus, but then normally on every campus they're spread over the other campuses as well. So let's see, we have more than the half of the questions, so let's see if we can finish soon. Is there a concours for French degree students? So if you have a French diploma, then the CAD would be the right way to apply, and you can find the application deadlines on the website. Then, if you click on admissions on the about the master management, and then you find more information about that. Is it possible? It's possible to attend as the on-campus replacement test for GMAT if you, depending on which campus is responsible for your application. Not every campus is offering it, but some are. So it's always good to contact your program manager if they are offering it. Okay, there was one question that Samek already answered. Like, I have prepared for the CAT for more than a year, but if I start preparing for GMAT right now, is it possible to get 700 plus in 1 month? So the preparation are similar from your perspective?
Yeah, it's a little different. The quant section in CAT is tougher than GMAT. So if you're preparing for CAT, you will be prepared for the GMAT quants. But the verbal takes a different level from CAT. But yeah, so I did the same thing. I got a 99 percentile in CAT, but I had plans to study abroad for getting a greater perspective. So I thought for preparing for GMAT, and it took me probably 2 to 3 months to get the hang of GMAT, and I gave it with a 619 the first attempt. So yeah, it's useful if you are preparing for CAT and then you try to do GMAT.
Okay, that's possible. Good. Then there was a question about if the test centers are open during the coronavirus. James, you already answered. It depends on the restriction in your given location. So always check the website. Do you know also the following question? Is it compulsory to indicate ESCP when GMAT asks where you want to send the score?
No, oh, sorry. I was going to say you don't have to send your score to anyone if you don't want to, but I assume that ESCP would like to see the official scorecard being made available to them. But again, that's a question for the admissions office as well.
Yeah, well, we are also accepting the online results, so that's possible as well. Yeah, the statement of purpose or your motivational letter can of course be also a bit longer than 1 page, but normally around 1 page. Not a history or a story of 10 pages, but like 1 to 2 pages are great. Then the one question: if I do my GMAT at a test center, can I retake the GMAT online right after, or do I have to wait 16 days as well? So James, you already answered.
Yeah, so you can switch between the formats without waiting the 16 days. But I again recommend that you keep an eye on the policies because they may change as the online becomes more ingrained in the kind of GMAT ecosystem. But for now, you can switch between the 2 formats without having to wait because the question banks are separate.
Okay, good. Then the deadline for the September intake is beginning of May, normally for mostly all of the campuses. So please check the application deadlines on the website. And yeah, we would need the scores before the application deadline. Normally, if you need an exemption, of course, you can always contact your respective program manager and ask them if it's possible. But in general, we need all the documents then. The nearest deadline to submit our GMAT and IELTS score, well, the next application deadline, for example, in Berlin for applicants from Germany or Austria is the 26th January. There you can prove your knowledge of different languages. For example, if you're a native speaker, then with your passport. There's one question for you that you answered. Is it true that doing good in the first 10 questions in the GMAT gives you a higher score than making a mistake at first?
No, people should aim to answer all of the questions in the quant and the verbal, because that's more important. So there's a penalty applied if you don't finish those sections. So that's the key piece of advice there. Yeah, that's the answer to that one.
All right, and then the next is also for you. Are you going to announce the date extensions for GMAT Online soon?
Yes,
for example.
So I know that dates are only available into February at this point in time, but the next rollout will be coming soon.
So currently the dates are online for February, but not for March yet?
I believe so.
Okay. And then again, exactly, GMAT is counting 10%. It cannot directly eliminate your application if it's lower. It depends always on the overall application. If you want to know more about the different wages of your application parts, you can look at the IDA guidelines that you can find on the website. And for example, I can have a look. This is here, like your profile review, for example, is counting 14%. So a profile review is more like your work experience and international experience. Then the English test is counting 20, the GMAT 10, and the interview is 30%. The PMAT for the pre-master year will take place normally on campus, or for this question, please write me again an email or the respective PMAT responsible person, because currently I have no information about the pre-master year. Exactly. So if you're older than 30, the MBA is probably more convenient. Yeah, if you have no real work experience, you can still apply. And as mentioned before, student works, student jobs are also possible to mention. And yeah, and the application by the end of February, of course, is also possible, because it's still not the last application round, but so you still have chances. To validate your work experience, for example, if you want to validate the 16 weeks of prior work, this is necessary later. So for your application, you show us your work experience in the CV, but you do not have to show us the internship proofs now. This will be relevant once you have started your studies. And if you do the alternative test, the replacement test for the GMAT at ESCP, there is some test, there are some practice tests on the website. Then you can contact me directly, and then I can give you this website where you can practice a bit. Yeah, how many students usually sit in the lectures? Like Samyak already wrote, like around 30 to 50 normally. And in a specialization, it depends a bit if it's very big specializations or more for projects, and smaller or bigger. but around this number is quite good.
So yeah, I would like to add, it really depends on the course. So we also used to have big lectures where the faculty used to teach the whole class of 200 or 220, and then maybe the next week we will have the focused lectures in which only 20 students are there. So it depends on the faculty in which the way they feel the students will be able to grasp the concepts. They take the classes in that direction.
And it depends also on the campuses because, yeah, as mentioned before, Paris is the biggest one. In Berlin, for example, I think the biggest lecture hall is for 50 students. So normally they're not more, they're around 30, 20, 30. Right. If you have already, one applicant is asking that he has already taken the online GMAT, but he can't download a score report in form of a PDF. Do you know, James, if this should be normal and possible?
I don't know. I didn't know the answer to that question. So again, it's best to refer back to gmat.com or the customer services line if people need help. And I guess there's a question at the very end, just to reiterate the customer service piece. Again, I don't know the answer to that question. So any concerns that people have about enrollment or policies, the website or the customer care team.
Okay, then we can also share this contact details, perhaps in a follow-up mail.
Yep, so the customer care details are also on gmat.com.
Okay, great. Then, yeah, one question about if you have no work experience, of course, then you can compensate it with other parts in your application, like motivation, like voluntary works, perhaps, for example, if you volunteered in a student society or something else. So there are many other parts with which you can compensate it. There's one question. I know if you can answer, James, why do you think the performance in GMAT is always correlated to that in business school?
Yep, so that's just based on years of research, so what we call validity studies, where we take information from business schools and map it back to people's GMAT scores. Of course, there will be people who don't do well on GMAT but perform well in other ways, and vice versa. But generally, there's evidence to correlation between the two.
Okay, good. The one for you, can you share, or for Sonia, can you share your peers' experience on career and job search? I think that's a good question to answer, perhaps per mail, if they contact you directly. Or okay, I see Prakash is already still here. So if you want to give a short answer and on your experiences on career, internship, job search.
Sure. So the ESCP provides a lot of opportunities in terms of searching the jobs. We have these job datings in Paris campus. In Berlin campus, we have Berlin recruiting days. In London campus as well, we have London recruitment days. So basically, ESCP, what it does is it gives you the access to connect with these recruiters, to connect with these big firms, and then it's upon you to work upon. And regarding the career services, there are a lot of consultants, there are a lot of guides which helps you to build and structure your CV, your cover letters, your motivations, your pitches. So yeah, it's a lot of help, but you need to work as well in terms of getting that dream job for you. But if you want to know, you can always ping me on LinkedIn. We'll be happy to help.
Okay, great. It's also connected to the next question, how can one best maximize the value of the MEM program? How does the career service help? It's always good if you stay connected with different students. So I think it's one of the advantage, like your network will be very very big and also international. So you have students in different fields, and perhaps you can also add out of your perspective, Samyak, how you also what did you notice so far, which makes the MIM program more convenient, or what are the advantages?
So it's basically the diverse nature of the students that we have. The courses are really great. I enjoy them. So if someone is here to study management, it's really one of the best places in Europe. And ESCP particularly, it gives me access to different nations. For example, in first 3 or 4 months, I realized that okay, I won't be able to do it in France. So I can move it in English-speaking countries such as UK. I can search for some opportunities in Germany. So ESCP gives this chance to go to different countries. That is really a plus point. So I also got admit from ESSEC Business School in the same MIM program. And while deciding between ESCP and ESSEC, this was a main factor that I can move around different campuses to gain more opportunities and to learn from different people. And I think the amount of diversity that ESCP has, it's, I think, the largest amongst its competitors. There are a lot of people from different countries. So, and that gives you perspectives and different stories to hear all around, and it makes your experience really great.
Good arguments, thanks. Good, then the next question is about double degrees. Where can I find particular information? Well, on the one side, you can see them on the website. There's a list with the double degree programs, but then you can also ask your respective program manager. For example, if Turin is responsible for your application, then you can contact them, and they can give you the contact details from the double degree or dual degree colleague, and they will hand you first information. Then there was one question about information about your experiences as in the essays and in the cover letter. So yeah, somehow you can, of course, because you have the same, you're speaking about the same experiences, you can also repeat yourself or mention the same topics as you mention the same experiences. Perhaps not copy paste, but of course similar descriptions are possible. At admissions criteria, more information, like Samek already wrote. Yeah, the profile review with your work experience, international extracurricular experiences are important. Then English test 20%, the GMAT 10 or management test, and the interview itself as a second step is counting 30%. Then in general, one question about the application rounds. In general, it's always better to apply earlier, but it depends. If your application is well, then you will also have chances in the second round. So don't worry if you apply during the second round. The third round, it's still you still have the chances. One question about how can I improve my speed on the GMAT? James, perhaps you can repeat shortly your answer.
Yeah, I'm afraid it's just a case of practice, 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 and also then just understanding what the questions are looking for you to do as quickly as possible, and trying to find tricks and efficiencies that can help you to get to the answer of choice. But really, with all things GMAT, it's not designed to trick you or to trip you up. It is all about just being efficient and understanding the material that's being presented to you. So therefore, practice makes perfect, hopefully.
Yeah, practice always good. For the one question about job placement after the studies. Well, on the one side there is the campus, the career service, and for example, some students do already a student job during the last semester of their masters, and then they get offered, for example, a job in the student company, or for example, if you do your master thesis in some company, it's always good to connect already with some companies where you're interested to work later. Do you want to add something, Samek, to this question for the job placement after the studies, in case you have any experience?
I think your answer was fine. Right now I'm in my M1 year, but as I've heard from my seniors, so once you get a lot of internship experiences over, like the ESCP program is designed in certain way that you get a lot of work experience while doing a degree. So at the time of your job placements, in the end, it becomes pretty much easier for you if you have done internships in those firms to get a full-time job, or even to find a full-time job. So till now, I've heard from my seniors that it really becomes easier because of the structure. You already get work experience, but I'm yet to do that. So yeah, that's pretty much about it.
Okay, thanks. One question about, do you think schools always look at the latest GMAT score? Also, can taking multiple GMAT attempts work against the applicant in any way?
No, so most business schools will look at the highest score. I don't think I can think of any example that's not the case. And don't forget that if you do score lower on a second attempt, you can always cancel out that score, so the business school will not know anyway. In terms of multiple attempts, if you do have maybe 2 attempts on your transcript and you've made a good improvement, that could also show dedication and commitment to getting into the program of your choice. So definitely no harm in doing that.
Okay, good. Then is the online version of the IELTS test accepted? Well, currently, I think it's only possible to do the online version, so we are accepting also the online version. For the letter of recommendations, it has not to be from a professor from management background or from internship that is from the management background, but can be of any type. So it's more like the professor can specify your quality of academic skills or your work experiences. So it has not to be in the management background. Okay, then there's one question for you, Samyak. What do you enjoy most about studying at ECP? So you already wrote, but first you can repeat.
Yeah, I did answer that.
Shortly.
So I really like the courses. The class discussions are really fruitful and helpful, and the structure, like we study a lot of case studies, the real life case studies. We solve company cases which are really relevant right now. So it makes it really interesting. And apart from that, a lot of different people. So we get to hear a lot of different stories, different perspectives, which makes it really great.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I try to search for the new questions. Yeah, you need 36 weeks of internships. And you can prepare for the final recruitment months, like with the tips that we mentioned in the presentation for the interview. But of course, the recruiting is currently online, so the interviews will be online, and also the tests. I think this is one of the bigger differences. And of course, you should collect all the necessary application documents to have them prepared. And yeah, like Samek mentioned, as soon as possible is key. All right. Yeah, having only a good score on a GMAT is not sufficient because, as we mentioned, it's just counting 10%. For regarding the London campus, there's one question about if it's getting harder because of the Brexit to study there. I guess here it depends a bit if you are European student or non-European, and then there's also always a visa office on the campuses which can help you. So if you already know before that you want to go to London, so it's always good to contact them in advance and get the important information how you have to prepare for studying there. But as London is still one of our partner campuses, of course we make it possible. It's in our hands that you can study there. Okay. Yeah, there are two questions about admission rounds. As mentioned before, the admission rounds, as the last admission round, they're normally applying more students, so you will have more competitors, but nevertheless, you have still a chance to get in. Then should essays and motivation letter be in French or in English for French students? If you apply in France, also if at the Paris campus, as far as I know, normally English is always recommendable, but you can contact, in this case, your program manager, and then he can tell you if he or she prefers French.
I can add it to that. I think if you want to go for the French track, it is possible, but for the English track, it is not possible to get your essays in French.
Okay, so better in English then.
Yes.
Yeah, you have bachelor's in English and IELTS, then yeah, please upload both documents. And when you get your GMAT score in February, then in this case, please also contact your program manager if you can still apply for the January session. Normally, you should have all your documents prepared for the application deadline. Then there's one question. Yeah, what makes an essay stand out? What does the school look for an ideal candidate? Samika already answered something here. Yeah, as also mentioned in the presentation, like a good fit, international minded. And sorry, you can continue.
Yeah, so like it mostly matters that what is your motivation and how does your current path and studies leads you to pursue MIM? What are your previous experiences? Do you have any international experiences or any interactions? So a lot of things like that, but majorly your motivation and how does that relates to you coming to ESCP.
Perhaps it's also connected to the next question. What was your interview experience like? So do you remember some of the questions you were asked?
Yeah, so some of the questions include my internship experiences. So they asked me about my internship, a lot of things from my CV. For example, my bachelor's degrees experiences, my international experiences, and then they asked me about some European news and how do I feel about it. They asked me about Brexit as well in my interview. And then what I want to do in future, where do I see myself after this degree. So these were, I think, the basic questions, and they were expecting stories out of it, like what I have in plan. Do I know things about ESCP? Do I know the courses? Do I know what I want to do? Do I have that aptitude to compete with the brightest minds that will be there in ESCP? So it was something around that.
Okay, thanks. Then the next question is also for you about the language classes. He's asking if you have enough time to learn French as a language. Like you will have in the first year 2 language classes per semester.
Yes, so English was exempted for me, so I just had French. You can take 2 classes as well. So currently, also I'm taking French, and I have 2 classes per week. And apart from that, as well, I get a lot of time, and you interact with people, and you really it's the language is more of a practical thing. So I interact a lot with people. I go outside and talk to people. You go and talk to the grocery shop. Person, and that's how you learn the language. So yeah, I get a lot of time, and I spend a lot of time speaking French. So that's how I'm improving my French.
In real life, let's say. Okay, then there was one question about validating the work experience. We have a specific portal, the job teaser portal, and there you can upload your proofs of work experience. So this will be throughout your studies, where you can be, or where your work experience will be validated. So in altogether, you have to work, to collect 36 weeks of internships, and yeah, they can validate 16 weeks of prior work experience. Then let's see. I think we're coming to an end. Yeah, the reputation of the university where you did your bachelor's degree is taken into account, but yeah, as mentioned, it's not the most important point. So we are looking at it, but it's just one point of many. And so how long after submitting your application do you usually hear if you get an offer or not? Normally, let's say 1 or 2 weeks before the interviews are taking place, you will be informed if you're invited. And then there are the official dates after the interview when the admission results will be published. So, for example, for 26 January, you will be informed on the 26 February if you are enrolled or not. But you can see the admission results then on the website, or you can also ask us again. If you apply through the Madrid office, then you can ask them directly if your bachelor's certificate needs to be translated to English. Then for the financial need-based scholarships, do we get any news before September? Yeah, normally the applications are open during summer, and then in around September you will be informed. But right now I'm not involved in the process. I have no specific date right now. If you need more specific information, then please also contact your program manager and they can try to find out. So the last date to apply for the third round, or the third round is then the spring session. This would be the 16th March. And yeah, about GMAT, if it's compulsory to fill the last name in the form, if you don't have one. Yeah, here James recommended also to contact the website. Right.
Yeah, customer care for that one.
There was one question for Steinberg. If you did take help from someone while writing the SOPs and essays.
Yeah, so it is always important and helpful to know other perspectives for your application, and probably from someone who has already gone through the same process. So I did take some help from my friends who are really good in literature, and from some of my seniors from ESCP. So I crafted it in this way. So yes, I did take help.
Yeah, I think it's always good to have a search or more perspectives on the text. Then there's one last question For James, will one get the GMAT score directly after taking the exam?
For the in-person exam, yes, you get your score to be previewed at the end of the examination, and you can then decide whether to keep it or reject it. The mechanism for the online GMAT is slightly different, and you'll get your score within 7 days, but then there's more flexibility on how you manage that score. So the fees are reduced to give you the ability to make the same sorts of choices that you would have made had you done it in the testing centre.
All right, thank you. Then the last question is more a thank you from one of the attendees. So we would also like to thank you who attended until the end. Well, it's a small small group left, but nevertheless, thank you for your attention, and thank you also for you, James Barker, and for Samyak, that you have joined and shared all your experiences with us. And now, do you want to add anything as a goodbye?
No, so thanks for all the great questions, and thanks again to ESCP for the invitation to join today.
Welcome.
Yeah, for me as well, thank you so much. And if the students have more questions, they can always contact us through emails or through LinkedIn requests. But we're really happy to help.
Okay, great. Just one last. It's one from, I think, from Turin. She's asking about the last 2 dates for the spring session. Turin is offering 2 admission days for the spring session, so you can apply until 9th February or 16th March. So on the first date, you will have your admission day interview earlier and the other one later, but you will get your admission results on the same day. So if you apply for the February, then you will get your admission results a bit later. Okay, then let's finish this here. And yeah, I wish you all nice rest of the week. And yes, as Samik already mentioned, feel free to contact us or also my colleagues from the other campuses. We are ready to help and answer your questions. So then, goodbye and take care. See you soon.